Hi, Raquel Lowe, soologist. So I just want to have hopefully a quick talk about emotions today. So a lot of what we do is we feel. And I think one of the things that we're here to do on earth is feel. Feel all of the joy and all of the pain. And that's what I think we're here to do. So I wanted to talk just quickly about emotions and this feeling state that we have, and some of the things that have helped me get more aware of my emotions, and how to hold those emotions and how to process them, and also doing that for other people. So just quickly, back in 2009, I was in a professional development, and the teachers were encouraging all of us to help clients differentiate between thoughts, sensations, urges for action, and emotion. And although they all complement each other and join with each other. So if you're having an emotional state, there's usually thoughts attached to it, sensations attached to it, urges for action. But there's this mindful curiosity and differentiation between the different components. So that was one of the things that I started to do with clients. And actually, many years later, in 2018, I all of a sudden realized to myself, wow, I don't have a very big emotional vocabulary. And that had been sort of okay up until that point, because what I then realized with the clients, all of us, me included, and that's part of the development process and the survival process, is that we go up into our head and there's a lot of thinking and analysing, and it's part of the unconscious management process of emotional states that we develop when we're younger. And so what I had discovered, that we were all very used to talking about our thoughts about a certain situation, and less used to talking about any of the other components, for example, our urges for action or our sensations or our emotions. So I started moving into what are the urges for action associated with different thoughts, and people were pretty good at being able to discern those. And there are sort of two broad categories that we often found, which was an urge to either fight or control or pursue or fix or chase. And then there was the flee urge for action, to avoid, to numb, to shut down, to move away from, withdraw. So, and then we start exploring sensations. What are where, when you're having this experience or this emotion or this thought, are the sensations in your body? And fear comes to mind really quickly for me, because fear was often really associated in the gut for a lot of people, stomach, and then also up here, chest and throat. Anyway, 2018, I was like, I don't have a very big emotional vocabulary. And you may have realised this too out in the world when you're talking to people. You're like, how are you? And it's like, good, not bad, busy, stressed. And I remember it around this time just going, oh my God, good tells me nothing. It's not an emotion. Neither is not bad, and neither is busy. And then I started to notice that if people did go into a little bit more depth, which was really rare, one of the things I noticed that people would swear about, for example, the emotion of anger or annoyance or frustration. Instead of saying I'm frustrated or I'm annoyed, they'd say I'm pissed off or I'm shitty or I crack the shits. And I'm like, wow, we don't have the language for emotion, and it's just not common to actually share that. There's this standard response of not bad, good, busy. And I was like, okay, so our parents didn't have the language. Most of our parents didn't have the language, and we weren't taught. So I remember past Raquel had photocopied a handout about naming emotions from the dialectical behaviour therapy book, which is the one that I started to study. But I encourage you to, at the end of this, look up on the internet any list of emotion words to get familiar with. So why name emotions? Why have an emotional vocabulary, not just for conversing with people? So what I was working with at the time was my own feelings of anger, which I'd had a lot in exile. Anger was like one of those dangerous ones. And so I looked up the anger words, and don't get caught when you're looking up words, whether they're primary emotions or secondary emotions. Just look up emotional word lists. And what I did was feel into the different words. So anger, for example, had annoyance, frustration, exasperation. It also had fury and rage and vengefulness and wrath. and grumpy and grouchy. And I was like, okay, there's so many different expressions of this, emotional state that we call anger. And so I started to use those words in my everyday language, and I started to then be able to work out, well, there's a difference in the feeling between grumpy. There's a difference in the feeling between furious and exasperated, right? So I could feel those differences in my body and which ones I was familiar with and which ones that I just didn't like or was, repressing. And I worked out things like with exasperation, for example, we get taught, especially with anger, like to manage your anger, but no one really says how to do that. And I see it very simply. Just like sadness often has crying, just like happiness often has laughter, just like lust has a passionate expression, so too does anger, right? So for me, I was looking at the word exasperated, and I'm like, oh, exasperation for me is like a stomp and a roll of my eyes, and I'm good. Like I can peak and release in that regulation. I don't need anyone else to help me co-regulate that. Whereas something like when I was really frustrated or furious at something that had happened, I found that I did need to, if I was talking to someone else, really talk about it and get it out and say all the things that were frustrating me. So I needed someone else. And I also worked out with these bigger states of anger, like fury, that, yeah, you need an expression. So I started testing, how do you express it, right? So safely, by myself. I started to work out that there is sometimes an urge to punch things. I found out on the inside of my car, there's a padded section that's hard but soft, and you can punch it. I remember one day pulling to the side of the road going, I am not up for this. I am not up for this. And I was punching. And then it peaked and released, because everything does if you can express it, right? Then I looked up words like happy. There are so many beautiful words that go into this word. So joy, enjoyment, relief, amusement, hope, satisfaction, enthusiasm, thrill, cheerful, excitement, contentment, zany, delight. There are so many different emotional words. So if you want to do this shadow work, if you want to look at emotions that have been repressed, if you realize that your emotional vocab's fairly low, just because we weren't taught, and we know what the words mean, but we just don't have them as part of our language. And so it helped me to language them, sense into them, and then be able to express them to others, and then be able to regulate them and hold my own container, and be able to then, if I'm comfortable and familiar with my own expressions of emotion, then I can hold other people's expressions of emotion, which is really important in relationship, to be able to hold and just go, yeah, this person's frustrated. That's an emotion. We all have it. There's a whole list on jealousy, and jealousy seems to be one of, oh, I'm not a jealous person. Another description of jealousy is fear of losing someone or something. So these words have been exiled by by society as well, and I just encourage you, as part of this work, to do something as easy as looking up a list, getting yourself familiar with the words, and then sharing them with other people. And one thing also, you don't have to explain any of your emotions. You can say an emotion. I remember one time saying to someone, they asked me how I was, and I'm like, I've had a lot of emotions over the last week, but right now I'm feeling content. Now I remember that person being taken aback, because that was a lot of information. It's not though, and it's a beautiful, beautiful way to start being really, really in touch with yourself and start being able to relate to your emotions and to your emotional world and to others' emotional world. Thanks. So much love. Bye.